And I have these templates. So what I just do is everything in red is the stuff I'm going to be wanting to work. This is the normal format for what an ISA lesson would look like. It has 5 parts, and the one part that was a significant barrier for us today was not knowing what would be a familiar read. So normally that first read is really fast. It's a reread of something they've already read. So today it had to stand in for something more than that. But you wouldn't normally take anything like as much time as we took on that first one. It would be a reread, and then you'd be working the other stuff on the cold read. But since it was a cold read for the kids, we went with that. And you might want to take a look at the 2 books I chose. They're both, you don't have to do that now, but at your leisure. They're both D's, but I did choose them because they showed you a little bit of the variation in what a D can look like. And that's important for you. I know you all are working on using your text a little more intentionally, not just relying on level alone. I almost pulled an E, but I couldn't tell from their results again whether that, I didn't want to frustrate them, when the first time they're doing it in this setting. So, I think actually if you were working it instructionally, at least 2 of those kids could do an E, and I think they'd be fine because they'd come up to more things to work at, as long as you're comfortable with it. And they are pretty sturdy. They're pretty reliable users of the strategies. So, things you noticed, questions that came up for you.
One question that I've had in general, I wanted to ask when you were here today. I'm working really hard on that very intentional pause and giving them time to work through the strategy.
Right.
How do you make the teacher decision when is enough?
Yeah.
Or, because I made some notes today where you just gave them a word.
Yeah.
How are you making that decision?
At least in 2 of those cases, they were high frequency words I didn't think they could work out.
Yeah.
So, but my decision point is, are they likely to, do they have the tools to be able to do this right now? I try not to intervene too early because kids surprise you all the time. You just think, oh man, I didn't think they'd get that at all, and they got there. I had less to go on this time to know whether they could or not. But, and D's tricky because they're just getting some stuff under their belt. So, but I don't do it, normally I don't do it right away at all. In one case, I was ready for it, but did not do, both changed implants. I had on cards that I could have pre-introduced if I'd wanted to, but I didn't want to. I really wanted to see if they'd work it. And they tried it. Nobody got completely flustered.
Yeah.
So that's good news. But that's the dimension I use. Is, do they know enough to be able to figure this out? And even then, I will give them some space.
I have a comment, and that goes into a question. I liked that there was a little independent work, so you could kind of do that individual conferencing that we had been talking about.
That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, and also that, because, Tracy and I had been talking about, well, when do you have time to do individual conferences with kids? And that gave you that opportunity to do a running, because you used the running record as also an exercise in conferencing. It wasn't just, I'm taking notes because are they at that level, but it was, okay, now you're stuck and now I can help you and do that conversation.
Exactly.
So I did like that part, but how often would you suggest doing it, once a week per kid, or like how?
Well, actually, and this I really have to give Jane Camper, who's a gifted reading specialist up in Milton, some credit for some of the routines that we were able to develop, because she was our partner in crime when we really took on ISA and came up with some routines and so on that aren't a part of ISA itself, but we've incorporated and used. And so actually, in a small group setting, I would have somebody would be doing something independent every day, and they would take different forms. So again, I couldn't count on how much they could do. I knew they could do those, so that was and they love them. I have them for silent E words too. So You know.
Teachers pay teachers, is that what?
No, I made them all,
You
but
did that.
yeah, I did. But that would be a good thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, though, if I had known them better, Jane developed a whole little routine in which the kids check each other's sight vocabulary. It's brilliant. So one of them is reading the list while the other one's reading aloud. One of them's, and they're checking. They love checking. And so in the early going, they, of course, it's a little sketchy because they might not know. But after you get it up and running, they do the sight word checks themselves. So that with a partner, one of them checks the other, and then the other checks them, and it gives them 2 reads of those sight vocabulary with some intentionality. So that's another really good one. So at the level we're talking about with these kids, sight vocabulary and any sort of reveal tasks are really easy to run independently. As they get further, then we set them to reading on their own as well, with their own folder, and I give them a couple of gems and their strategy chart, and they will, once the book's introduced, then their job is to read a couple of pages on their own and do their own strategy checking. And you can, and if they really get lost, you're just doing a running record, they're right there, you can.
Right. So you try once a week, each child once a week.
Running records?
Yeah.
No, every day.
Oh, every day. Oh, okay.
So that's the part that I would do it with a kid who is struggling every day. And that's why you need the 30 minutes. You get a warm up, a quick warm up, and then a cold read. Then that becomes the warm up the next day, and you can run them through that way pretty quickly. And you can see 3. You can't do 4 every day, for sure.
3 kids or 3 groups?
3 kids. Oh yeah, 3 kids in a 25 to 30 minute thing. And again, we had to get to know each other. We lost a good 5 minutes. I mean, we could have gotten even deeper into this lesson plan. With just a little more time. So you should be able to do a running record at this level. Now, once they get up to E and F,
Right.
you don't need to do it every day. Actually, by the time they get to F, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't pull back much before F, where you're pretty sure the reading they're going to do on their own is useful reading. And then if you need to, if time's a real issue, then you can do some choral reading where they whisper read, themselves, or even do some choral reading together, so that they've got eyes on print and you can, catch that. But kids at this age, and the books that, is even with level texts, the challenges within them are unique enough that if you're not really watching what's this kid doing. I was startled, for example, I would not have predicted that Letty would struggle with SED. I just wouldn't have predicted it. She was, she presents as capable and was doing really well with some other stuff, but that was a challenge. So, and I need to know that. And we need to go after that. Next book's going to have SED in it, and we're going to really go after that. So that's why it's important to be able to collect those running records. Really, every day.
So can I clarify, so levels A through D,
Yeah.
half an hour, they should be in a half an hour session for
Well,
a session, a group.
Because they can't sustain themselves without a teacher in doing profitable stuff. Yeah, it's a half hour with you
And getting.
or somebody
so
like you.
Running record or conference with each of them in the group.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I would say that this is where, in a 90-minute block for kids A through D, we try and give them another dose. So they actually might be working with another adult. I know, but that eyes on print, there's just no substitute, and they're not getting it elsewhere. They're just not, and you can't ask them to read independently. They can't. So now that could
Thank
be.
you for saying that, because I do but I do think that is something we have to recognize
But
and
you
acknowledge.
you can do taped readings.
Yep.
That works for especially as you creep up to D. Where the kids will, you trust that they'll finger point and really be looking at the print.
So
But
what are your other kids that are not in group with you doing then if they
well,
independent reading is not?
no. So
reasonable.
some of them will be continuing work you can put in. Not every kid necessarily needs an ISA structured group either.
Right.
So if you're doing something closer to regular guided reading, you can set kids in motion, get them going, and then they should be able to sustain. If you want to embed some, this is actually one of the reasons I'm reluctant at this early part of first grade to have a separate writing block. I like to bring some writing in. I was prepared to do writing with these kids if we had a full half hour today. It won't be fancy writing, it's not, it's not great concepts, but it'll be some, and most kids can do that. So you can bring in a bit of writing as a follow-up to the reading, even whether that's, what do you like for lunch? Write 2 sentences about what you like for lunch, or, and even if they list words, it's a bit of work. A bit of word work can do it. It can't be all of their word work, but so one sort of 30-minute chunk of a 90-minute block can be that kind of stuff that you got going independently. But honestly, if you want to really get kids up and running, having another person to run another small group while you're running yours is going to be the very best way to do it. Especially with the kids who need double doses. And your struggling readers they'll get you and they'll get the classroom. So that's 60 or so minutes of a 90 minutes, and then the other stuff you can figure, you can usually figure out. I'm not averse to having kids use, as I say, taped read-alongs. Any really interacting with serious print. If you're doing if you're introducing a book, where you want comprehension as a thing, then you can do some follow-up work with that too. Kids can they can go back through the book group and see if they can find a book that has a character like the one that they just heard about, It can be superficial, this is a bear too, or it can be somebody who acts like theirs as they get more sophisticated. Going back into books, I am all over that, I'd rather a kid reread a book than find something else that's seat-worky. And most of them are still excited enough to do that, if they're comfortable.
Leaving just this topic for a second,
Sure.
going back to the actual lesson. So I know, today what struck me was you had one child reading at a time, and the others were listening.
Yes,
And
sort of.
Fair statement. And I know, that round robin idea.
Yeah, I don't like it normally. I actually used it I'm glad you asked.
So that's, I just wanted some,
Yeah.
yeah.
I did it intentionally because I wasn't sure how comfortable they were with the strategies. So it was a way to push the strategies before I worked with them individually. And I wouldn't have worried if I'd known they were that comfortable with them.
Okay.
On the other hand, I also wanted to show you that if you have kids reading one at a time, you can manage it. You can keep them from yelling out by giving them that task. And as these kids get just a little better, there is some value in watching their peer solve a problem, and recognizing that they're using the strategy. It's a nice reinforcement, actually.
Yeah.
We do some of that partner reading, actually, as as they get a little more capable. An independent task in a small group. So one kid reads to another and a partner, and their job is to mark the strategies. So,
and it was a very purposeful oral read. Where they had a job as
Yes.
opposed to a round robin, which would be more traditionally kind of a routine where kids are just reading aloud, taking turns reading aloud.
but still, it was right on the edge of something I
Yeah.
wouldn't normally love doing. On the other hand, I didn't know the kids. I knew I needed to hear them.
Yeah.
Until I heard them, I
Yeah.
didn't know what else
Yeah.
I could do, really.
Well,
So.
and because they're mine, I have that advantage.
Yes.
What I will say, and again, I wouldn't sit and do it every time that way.
Yeah.
But with those particular kids, and especially Braden, he's one
Yes.
that I've been concerned about since day 3 of school. It held him more accountable. I saw him work